If you're anything like me, standing up in front of an audience is one of the most important things in the world to you. But if you're anything like me as well, then you might find that kind of a scary prospect. So today I'm going to give you 10 steps to getting out of the studio onto the stage and hopefully convince myself to do the same. I'm Michael Forrest and this is Leaving the Laptop, a series about playing electronic music live. Step 1. Commit. Look, if you want to play, you've got to commit to a show. This can be the most difficult step, especially if nobody else is offering you gigs at the moment. You have to really psych yourself up. If you're new or trying something different, like I am at the moment, you've just got to ignore all those voices telling you that you're not ready. If you've had some bad experiences on stage in the past, just push them to the back of your mind. Just forget about it. Because the only way to get better is to just do it and keep doing it. So commit to a date by saying yes to a promoter and the fire under your ass will get lit. To take the pressure off, try booking more than one show. And instead of putting everything into this one night, you're starting a journey instead. Now you can write 100 gig begging emails to promoters and not get a single response, especially if you're relatively unknown. The easiest way to get a booking is to put on a show yourself. It's much easier to get a response from a venue booking inquiry than from a promoter. Becoming a promoter yourself means that you can go to other artists with the offer of a gig instead of asking them to give you a gig. And nobody ever complains about promoters putting themselves on the bill. And the more shows you put on, the more artists you'll connect with and the more opportunities you'll open up. 2. Prepare. Okay, listen. Some of my favourite shows ever have involved coming up with music on the spot, or having some other random musician come up on stage with me and join in, things I could never have planned. And taking risks looks good on stage, but only if it goes well. And you can't live by those flash-in-the-pan moments. You've got to be prepared and ready. So once you're committed, start preparing as soon as possible so you don't end up having to take a day off work the day before your show. But why is it so difficult? It's because you have to turn an infinite range of possibilities into a finite, specific list, like just an underwhelming list of tracks. So I am going to talk about stem creation for a bit, because while it may be that you can play your whole set from hardware, most of the time you're going to need to sort out your stems. This is boring. The longer you leave it, the more likely it is that you'll load up the project file again and there'll be missing audio files or lost plugin settings, or you just can't remember what the file's called. You'll probably have a bit of an organisational challenge on your hands, so use colour, track grouping to organise everything into a template you can deal with. The way I'm organising things at the moment is on the Octatrack, so I'm limiting to sort of 7 parts. So I've got drums, bass, and then pianos, which any sort of piano things that I could be playing live that I might just want to turn off. I put those on a separate track. Then I've got sort of other bits of music, solos, synths. Then I've got effects and voice parts. And then maybe like a vocoder carrier source that I can send to a different output. I usually run every stem through a mastering channel to make sure it works on its own, but depending on what you're doing, you might want to make sure that it sort of mixes right when you put it all together rather than peaking. And if you can get things to a multiple of like 4, 16, 32 bars, it's going to be a lot easier for other tools to auto-slice and tempo match and that sort of thing, and that's definitely true for the Octatrack. As well as stems, now's a good time to grab the key loops and hits from your track so that you can load up different samplers or loopers with the elements of your songs. This is a great way to create a coherent sound when using different bits of kit. Each different device will do different things, but it'll be tied together by your sound, by your voice. Don't get me wrong, this is admin. It's error-prone, it's tedious, but if you're playing electronic music, it's unavoidable. So get it out of the way as soon as possible so that you can start playing around and having fun. 3. Practice. You know when and where you're playing, so now you can nail down a set list. Build it up as you go, but try to get it finalised sooner rather than later. This is about turning an infinite potential into a specific event. As I said, this is tough because it involves saying no to way more things than you can say yes to. Find a way to play to your strengths. Now, I've had access to pianos my whole life, so I'm pretty comfortable learning a chord sequence, and over time I've got better at writing songs in the range I'm comfortable singing. I feel like figuring out how to play a song live is like solving an equation. You need to find out a way to perform that places the risk where you're comfortable and sort of err on the side of easy, because once you're up on stage and you can't see or hear anything properly, you may need to just, put blind faith that what you're doing sounds okay. Here's what I'm planning on using for my shows. I have an octa track loaded up with samples. I'm sending a clock to the modular, and then I can beef up the drums with the analog drum rig, play synth parts on the Waldorf, but I can also use those chords that I'm playing to inform the vocal processor so that it knows what key I'm in and everything. The nice thing about this is that I can practice my songs on the piano at home to make sure I have all the chord sequences and lyrics down, and then I'm just throwing on beats and extra layers and bigger electronic sounds on top of a performance that could still work without them. Practicing can be pretty boring, and I've never been a good student because I'm terrible at it, but practice is ultimately what makes you stand out. Do you want to be just tweaking knobs and just subtle things, or do you want people to really see you play? As well as knowing your songs, you've got to know your equipment inside out. You need to know what every single knob and fader does, because when you're under pressure, you might nudge one by accident, and if you don't know what happened, your whole set can go in the toilet. There are two reasons I don't like practicing. One, because to start with, it just doesn't sound good and I feel like a fraud and a faker and an untalented piece of shit. But then when it starts sounding good, I hate that so many unique, beautiful moments are just lost forever, never to be heard by another soul. There's nothing to be done about the first problem. But once you start getting into the routine, live streaming is a really good way to work on your set in front of a handful of listeners. You can also look back at the recording and see how your performance comes across and make any changes for the next one. And you can do that on your own schedule. When I was in Berlin, I did it for 2 hours every night, although that's quite hard to fit into London life. Some say practice makes perfect, and others say perfect practice makes perfect. Personally, I'm not a great believer in perfection. I practice to make myself adaptable. If I have a chord sequence down, now I can play with it. You can't do that with a backing track. Number 4. As the gig approaches, make sure people know about it. Contact press, find a PR person if you can, invite your friends, and have a nice flyer designed. Use all the social networks, because you're going to need to get a bit spammy. And this is hard when you're still not feeling quite ready. You might not want your friends to see you if you're not feeling super confident yet, but you need to trust yourself that you will be ready when the time comes. And also try to line up somebody with a good camera to take pictures of the show. Even if you end up playing to a room of 8 people, at least you'll get some photos out of it. 5. On the day. Now, you got to pack up your stuff and get it to the venue, so you'll need cases and all that. Now, I like my little Allen and Heath mixer now because I can be pretty sure that the sound engineer will be able to take the XLR out and that I just need to mix it on that mixer. But really, it depends what you're doing. When you're packing up, just keep the power supplies together, make sure you've got all the cables that you're going to need. And to be honest, you're always going to forget something important. And it's kind of why I like to book gigs near home so that I can rush home and get something, especially while you're developing a set anyway. Don't assume there'll be a table for you. If you can travel with your own stands, you'll be much more in control. Sound checks are really important. Once you're out the studio, everything's going to just sound worse. There are 2 main things to consider when you're in the sound check. 1, does it sound right in the room? And remember, an empty room doesn't sound the same as a full room. And 2, can you hear yourself? Now, there's no substitute for a good sound engineer, but just to be on the safe side, make space to pack some headphones. Now, it's incredible how many electronic artists derail a sound check with prolonged technical difficulties. Don't turn up to a show with dodgy cables. Try to have as much stuff pre-wired as possible and draw a diagram before you pack everything at home to show what plugs into where, ideally in a form that someone else could follow if they needed to. Each show comes with different problems, and you need to be able to overcome the panic and anxiety that will inevitably be conferred by a sound engineer's judgmental face. If something's not working, take a few deep breaths and then just start from the beginning, troubleshooting connections one by one, switching out cables until you find the problem. It's possible that there's a switch that got accidentally toggled in transit that you just didn't know was there, or maybe you just plugged an audio cable into a CV out. But just don't panic, stay calm, you've got this. 6. Preparing to get on stage. Waiting to go on stage is a perfect storm of boredom and anxiety. You will feel a strong urge to get drunk or high or both, but I need you to resist that urge. I used to limit myself to 1 drink before going on stage, enough to take the edge off the terror, but not so much that it throws me off my game. Since I quit drinking, I've been using meditation, Just take a few minutes to get present. You need to find a space to center yourself and breathe. If friends come up to say hi, you can apologize and remind them that you're in that pre-performance anxiety mode and that you can have a proper conversation after you've played. Honestly though, the whole thing will just be like a dream. You may not remember anything about it. Also, as the moment approaches, you're definitely going to need a poo. So maybe treat yourself to the disabled toilet. 7. Being on stage can be really disorientating. You're likely to be too hot, blinded by lights, and finding it difficult to see or hear your own equipment properly. But remember to be present. This is your moment. If you spend your entire time worrying about what happens next, you won't be with the people in the room. Look up. See who's there. See how they're reacting. Be with them. And if they're giving you positive energy, you need to amplify that and feed it back to them. When things don't go perfectly, you don't need to show that on your face. Don't apologize. Everything is exactly as it should be. You're the only person who knows how you wanted it to sound anyway. So just take your time. I like to make my 3-minute pop songs last 20 minutes when I play them live. It doesn't hurt to have a timer somewhere you can see it. You probably don't want to be checking your watch, but maybe use your phone because your perception of time will go absolutely haywire up there. And then, like between songs or at the end, don't forget to tell people who you are. Tell people if you have merch. Tell people where they can find you online. Say your name. If you have a track that you want people to buy, tell them what it's called and just thank people for being there, because their attention is the most valuable thing you can ask for. Own your mistakes. Don't get discouraged. Enjoy the good bits, because if people see you having fun, so I'm told, they're going to have fun too. 8. When you come off stage, you will feel a powerful urge to say, "That was f***ing terrible, I'm so sorry." Suppress that urge. Listen to what people tell you and believe them. In this moment, you are a terrible judge of how it went. Take in the moment, enjoy the reactions. If you meet new people, write down their names, take their emails so that you can follow up later. And make sure you speak to the promoter or venue owner and try and ask them for some feedback. And hopefully they'll ask you to do it again. 9. Packing up. Don't worry about your equipment too much. It should be fine. You can get it packed up after the next act is finished or after you've finished catching up with your friends. Take your time to pack up and use a torch to make sure you haven't left anything. Don't just dump all your cables loose in your bag. Use cable ties. Untangling cables is bullshit, and they can easily get damaged, and then you'll be the guy with technical problems at your next show. It's good to have an after party booked as well, because you don't really get to have fun while everyone else is having fun at the gig, so you sort of want to be able to hang out with some people afterwards if you can. 10. Remember why you're doing this, because it's hard and it can be really punishing. People's attention is valuable and you have to work really hard to get them to remotely care about you, and that can feel really unfair. And it might rain and nobody turns up, and people might leave during your set. And even if you feel more prepared than you've ever been, the show can still flop. But then again, you can feel totally unprepared and you might get that lightning in a bottle moment. And if you get a room full of people dancing, if you see the faces of people you thought were too cool to like you, looking up in admiration, when somebody says, "What you did up there, that was something else," you'll get those moments that define you for the rest of your life. So keep the faith, work hard, stay consistent, and just remember that you're giving people a gift. And that maybe once in a while, somebody might actually thank you for it. This is just a dream. Thanks for watching. Why don't you tell me about some of your best and worst experiences on stage, or like some of the reasons that you tell yourself that you're not ready to play? Because I think so much of this is perfectionism and psychology, that if you can just get past step 1 of committing and just try and just internalize the content of what I've said. Because honestly, I played a gig this week where I took the footage for this video, and so much of my advice in the moment I just didn't really take myself. So, you know, I think it's good to have this list and just try and remember it next time, and just hopefully get better and better and better. And again, the only way to get better is just to keep doing it. If you want to support me in my videos, you can come and find me on Patreon, where you can give me like $1 a month as a little vote of encouragement. And I've sort of got some behind the scenes stuff and assets, and maybe like if you want to pay a bit more, I'm sort of offering some tech support on like things you're making, or just sort of getting a set together or whatever. And then of course subscribe if you want. Find me on all the social media if you want, and I hope I'll see you for next month's video. Bye!